I'm very grateful to Sean. He was the first started last week, and a big support of Break Drink kind of from the start. So I'm really glad that Sean is able to be with us today. Sean Cook from HigherEdCoach.com and HigherEdLifeCoach.com. And without any further ado, I'll let Sean get going.
Hello, everybody. As Jeff said, this is Sean Cook from HigherEdCareerCoach.com. And today I'm going to be talking to you about mastering the job interview. Okay. This webinar is also an abbreviated version of some content I'll be providing later in my placement season coaching program. So if you are interested in learning more about that, you can let me know at the end of the program. Without further ado, we'll just go ahead and get started. I am a certified life purpose and career coach through the Life Purpose Institute, which is an ICF recognized coach training program out of California. I spent 15.5 years in higher ed, in student affairs, as an administrator. Most of that time was in residence life, and most of that was at Penn State. I have certificates in Mastering Supervision and from the Management Institute at Penn State. So that's just a little bit about me and who I am. In an interview, it's such a great thing. Congrats, since it's a little early, you know, you're expecting to be off. If you're not prepared, you might go down in flames. I just wanted to put a picture of flames in there. I just thought flames were cool. Okay. All right. Now, we spend a lot of time talking with candidates about making sure their resume is perfect. And a good bit of what I do as far as coaching is coaching people initially on their resume and how to get it together. But despite all the attention we pay to resumes and making them perfect, the truth is they won't get you hired. You need to think of your resume as a ticket that gets you in the door, but you know, so you're at this concert, but you want to go up and hang out with the band, you're going to have to make an impression. So I'm a musical guy, that's my analogy that I like to use. You make an impression, maybe you get to hang out with the band. Okay. Resumes are used by employers for screening the candidates. Interviews are used for selection. And they're used for selecting the best qualified person for the job. But there's one qualification you can't put on a resume, and it's this. It's fit. Now, I'm sure you've heard the term, and you've probably wondered what the heck that means. It may seem nebulous, but that's only because it is. What we mean by fit is that every institution or business has a culture of its own, and each culture has its own history, traditions, ways of being, and ways of doing. So going into interviews, you need to understand that there are many factors that play. I mean, it's not just the industry, and in particular our industry, higher education, but there are regional differences. There's differences in staff makeup that you may need to try to understand. Picturing where this position fits within an organization, what their functional roles are. Your competitive environment, so you can be a great candidate, but so are many people that you're competing with, and the economy. So the mindset that you need to take going into an interview is not whether you're qualified. The question to answer is, will you fit? Your job in the interview is not to just communicate that, but to radiate that. You want to give the interviewers a sense that you are the best qualified person for the job. To do this, you need to address every question and every interaction on the basis of fit. Now, it does start with your experience. If your experience doesn't meet their needs, you're going to get filtered out pretty early in the process. But there's more to the questions that are going to be primary to your interviewer. Chief among them, how will you integrate into their team? And are you coachable? There's a great reading by a guy named Robert Weston on the value of doubts. It's called Cherish Your Doubts. And I was bored in church one day, and I went to the back of the hymnal and was reading this, and I share it with a lot of my clients because I think doubt is a great place to start in your interview planning. It's also a great place to revisit on a regular basis in your planning. But you need to know its use. Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth. Doubt is the key to the door of knowledge. It is the servant of discovery. A belief which may not be questioned binds us to error, for there is incompleteness and imperfection in every belief. Doubt is the touchstone of truth. It is an acid which eats away the false. Let no man fear the truth, that doubt may consume it, for doubt is a testing of belief. The truth stands boldly and unafraid. It is not shaken by the testing. For truth, if it be truth, arises from each testing stronger and more secure. He that would silence doubt is filled with fear. The house of his spirit is built on shifting sands. But he that fears no doubt and knows its use is founded on a rock. He shall walk in the light of growing knowledge. The work of his hands shall endure. Therefore, let us not fear doubt, but let us rejoice in its help. It is to the wise as a staff to the blind. Doubt is the attendant of truth. So, you are going to go into your interview with doubts. This is, if you start from what you doubt, you're going to be able to provide yourself that rock, that great foundation for getting to the truth of who you are and your match as a candidate. This means that you need to approach all of your qualifications with a skeptical eye. Look for solid clues about what they want in a new employee and relate your experience to their needs in every way possible. Again, your experience does count, but only if you can relate it to the functional role you'll play, your ability to solve problems, being a team player, how you handle conflict, whether you can work independently, and your willingness to take direction or feedback. If you can't explain your experience, you don't have the right experience. So make sure when you're planning your interview strategy that you have specific examples of your skills and experience. And the details do matter. You need to own your story. Now, there's a great article in here that I've linked to called the Quentin Tarantino Guide to Creating Killer Content. It's by a guy named Sean Platt, and it appears on the Copyblogger website, which is really a website for bloggers. Now, some of you may be familiar with the movie Reservoir Dogs, and some may not. It's one of my favorite movies. There's a great scene in Reservoir Dogs called the Commode Story. And in this story, Tim Roth is an undercover agent who needs to convince some jewel thieves that he is trustworthy and a career criminal like they are, and to kind of get into their circle of trust. He does this by telling a story, and his handler, his undercover senior agent, police officer handler, gives him a 4-page script about a story where he is trying to deliver a bag full of marijuana, and he walks into the bathroom at the train station before meeting his contact because he wants to wash his hands. And there stands 4 police officers and a drug dog. And he puts all these details into the story where you can feel who was there, how they interacted. He described the environment. So he was not just listing qualifications in his argument to be a member of this jewel heist team. He was telling a story. He was putting himself in it. And this is a great technique for explaining your specific examples. It's called the PAR model. There's a problem. In his case, his problem was he was a drug dealer and he walked in on police. His actions, he kept it cool and all this, there's a lot more detail in that, and the result was he got away with something. And he brought in himself in to this circle of trust in this movie. And of course, I'm not telling you that you need to go sell drugs. I'm not telling you you need to lie. I'm not telling you you need to even watch Tarantino films, though I really think Reservoir Dogs is great. What I'm telling you is in your interview, you need specific examples of how you solve problems, and you need to be in your story. You need to own it. You need to make all the details yours. In this scene in Reservoir Dogs, again, Tim Roth takes a 4-page general outline and he makes it his own. He brings out all the details of the important parts. He shows himself in the story. This is what you need to do. If you don't, what you're telling me is going to bore me, or it's going to seem trivial. And if you bore your interviewer or just tell your interviewer trivia, you're not going to get the job. Now, mastering the interview actually is something you need to do before you get there. And it starts with tough questions. You need to ask yourself tough questions before you apply. What does the employer need? Those are the minimum qualifications. What does the employer really want? We call those preferred qualifications. How do you meet those preferred qualifications? Now, your resume needs to address both minimum and preferred qualifications. So as you put your resume together, you do want to show that some of your experiences meet the minimum. And then put in some stuff that is unique to you, that shows accomplishment, that shows career progression. But your interview will be almost exclusively about whether you meet preferred qualifications. And this is the mindset you need to take into the interview. So, how do you know what an employer needs? In most cases, that's not a deep, dark secret. It's in the job posting. If the job posting is vague, ask if you can get a copy of the position description, the full position description, in the interest of making sure that you're a viable candidate. If you can't get a copy of the job description, and you will find this very often at smaller schools or less developed programs, you should consider that a red flag. That doesn't mean it's not a good job or a good institution. It means you need to arm yourself with plenty of questions to ask before, during, and after the interview so that you can really know what you're shooting for, and once you're have the interview and maybe looking at an offer, know what you might be getting yourself into. While your needs are important, they're beside the point. So in your planning, you need to approach everything from the employer's point of view. How can you assess your possible fit? Well, first, get out a copy of the job posting and get out a copy of your resume and a highlighter. Now, if you're not a pen and paper type of person, you can also do this on Word or Adobe Acrobat. Highlight important keywords that stand out in the position descriptions that you're shooting for. Then highlight keywords and phrases on your resume and compare the lists. It's a very simple process. Okay, when you make that comparison, what stands out? Are there matches between how they've phrased your needs and how you've phrased your qualifications? Pay attention to how they seem to have ranked or prioritized their needs. Now, some employers do this really well. They'll say 50% of the time this person will do this, 20% they'll do that. Pay attention to that and make sure that you mirror as much as possible the priorities of the employer. Now, if you've not phrased your needs in the same way that they've phrased, if you not phrase your qualifications in the same way they've phrased their needs, the question you need to answer then is, can you honestly rephrase your descriptions to match? If it's just a difference in describing the skill or experience, a choice of words, if you can honestly rephrase your descriptions to match theirs, do so, because that's what they're looking for. The other thing to take in as far as setting the mindset for an interview is to mind the gap. Now, if you've been to London and seen these signs in movies about London, at the subway they have these signs that say "Mind the gap." It just means watch where the edge of the platform is so that you don't get hit by a train. Okay. But in planning for the interview, you need to be able to address the gap. You need to keep this in mind. There are no perfect candidates, not even you, okay? Not the person in front of you that has new shoes and a new suit, not the person behind you that's got a long list of references and went to a top school. No one's perfect. The perfect candidate is an ideal. This person does not exist. Your job in the interview is to be the candidate that emerges as the best among available options. And if you want to make your best argument, you need to recognize that gap between your qualifications and those of this ideal candidate, again, who does not exist, and be ready to discuss ways that you will work to close those gaps or to overcome perceived weaknesses. Glossing over the differences will make you seem inexperienced and unready for the position. Do your homework. Visit the employer's website, look for mission and vision statements, annual reports, organizational charts, and read anything you can find on trends and outlook in your in the industry, in the higher ed industry. You can actually get this from the government. There's a website on Employment Outlook. Definitely read up on that. Google the employer or use Bing or Yahoo or whatever you like to use. Read all the recent news, especially that from the last quarter. Find out who their competitors are. Well, we don't really always think of ourselves that way in higher ed, but there may be some people that they're competing with or they're differentiating themselves from. And then, of course, study the industry. You need to connect the dots. By this, I mean leverage your personal and professional networks to get information about the company and the industry. You can use LinkedIn, Brazen Careerist, Facebook, Twitter, find out who you know. Join chats, forums, and discussions about the industry like the SA chat or the SA grad chat or the various residence life student activities chats that are coming up on a regular basis. Visit blogs that cover the industry like the Student Affairs Collaborative blog, Break Drink, my blogs, Higher Ed Career Coach, Higher Ed Life Coach. Hopefully you'll like to visit those every once in a while. Go in as an active learner, not a hardcore networker or a schmoozer, okay? The general rule in social media is to offer something to your network 12 times before you ask for something from them. Now, that's not something that's really easy to do, but if you give, you'll get. As a job seeker, you need to do your housekeeping. Set your social networking profiles to private. This is especially important for Facebook, which is more of a publishing medium than it is for Twitter and LinkedIn, which I would term as more of engagement mediums. If it's an engagement medium, you want to keep yourself open to having conversations with people who can be leads within your network. Facebook, in contrast, is very much about putting out kind of your personal mythology or your personal brand. It's a publishing medium. So it's best to set your network profile in Facebook, at least, to private, so that employers don't see any information that you might not want them to. Next step, Google yourself and see if you can find information that might concern an employer. Take it down if that's within your control, or be ready to explain it honestly if you can't get it taken down. Also, consider running a credit check or background check on yourself. Many schools will do the background check. Some background check companies that are hired out also run credit checks. And make efforts to dispute incorrect information. For interview day, none of this advice is going to be overly original. Get a good night's sleep. Eat something for breakfast. Even if you have breakfast as part of your interview, you'll find that you'll do more talking than eating. Make sure that you're not going to crash. Have something to eat before breakfast. You'll need the energy. Plan your travel on time so that you arrive on site 15 to 20 minutes ahead of time and are able to find the interview location with 10 to 15 minutes to spare. Walk with a sense of purpose, stand up straight, don't meander, all those things your mother always told you about being confident. Give a firm handshake if you can do it to each person you meet. Make eye contact and be gracious and polite to everyone you encounter. And turn off all your distractions, your cell phone, anything that might beep or click or distract you about the time. Definitely turn those things off. The interview itself is a balancing act. Now, you go in with some very interesting and competing goals. You need to answer questions honestly, well, and completely, but be succinct and targeted. You have to take control of the flow of the interview without stepping on the interviewer's toes. You need to be friendly without being chummy or overly familiar. So here are some ways to stay balanced. First, you must practice the interview. You'll feel more ready. If you don't know where to start, get together a list of common interview questions from a job search site. Monster.com has some resources. About.com has plenty of resources. Common interview questions are like, why do you want this job at this point of your career? What's unique about you? How do you spend your time at work? How organized are you? You'll find those are some very common questions. But another good way to find questions or anticipate questions is to review the job description and brainstorm. Answer all the questions in ways that relate your experience and interests towards your potential fit in the position. Remember, this is a presentation about you. Your comments and your questions need to convey a sense of purpose, a passion for both the employer and the opportunity, your goals, your accomplishments, your interests, and your willingness to learn. But do your best not to act like a know-it-all like this guy in the picture, because nobody likes that guy. You need to control the flow of the interview. Now, here are some things that I think will help you do that. First, write down the high points of each question before you answer it and refer back as you answer the question. If you don't understand a question, ask for clarification. And if you need a second to get your thoughts together, ask for it. Make sure you cover your most important talking points. Okay, go in, memorize some points, but keep them as points. Use models like PAR, Problem, Action, Result, to answer questions about your education experience and explain how you took action. But you need to rein in your storyteller instincts as much as possible so that you don't miss covering points. Answer the question being asked and then stop talking so the interviewer can follow up and ask the next questions. As an interviewer, one of my most common complaints about candidates who are otherwise likable and well qualified was that I didn't get to ask them all the questions I would have liked to ask them. So be sure that you stop talking and allow follow-ups. Your interviewer likely will have some. Refer to your resume only when necessary. If the interviewers want more detail, they should ask. Again, they should have seen it before the interviewer. They'll have time to review it after the interview. Okay? Ask the interviewer if you answered his or her question in enough detail. And if you get stuck, ask if you can come back to the question later in the interest of moving on and covering as much important ground as possible. Mind your manners. There's little point in attending an interview if you're going to be rude. So here's some basic interview etiquette. Come prepared. Always have a pen or pencil or a few on hand as well as a notebook. Take a few notes, but only to keep track of the flow of the interview or to allow you to refer back to something later. Bring extra copies of your resume, offer them to each person on the other team. If it's clear that they all have them, that's fine, but you never know. Ask if anyone needs one. If they do, Don't call them out because, of course, you never know how their day went or why they lost your resume. Just gladly hand one over. Say, I'm glad I brought extras. Here you go. Having a sense of humor is really important, and I know in student affairs especially, it's a critical skill. You have to have a sense of humor to make it in student affairs. But rein in your tendency to tell jokes if you're a joke teller. Some people might not get them or may not appreciate them, so telling jokes is a risky gamble. It's okay to be lighthearted in your back and forth, but don't come in with practice jokes. They're more likely to backfire than help. This should go without saying, but obviously some people have done it, and it's a mistake. Try not to fidget, flirt, fuss with your hair or nails. Don't answer your cell phone. Don't look at your clock. Also, in your answers, don't badmouth your current boss, your company, your competition, or really anyone else. It's bad form, and people wonder what you're likely to say about them when they're not around. Keep it professional, but make it seem personal. Here are some tricks to help set yourself and your interviewers at ease. Find out if you have mutual friends or experiences. Again, LinkedIn and Twitter are good, but there are new tools like GIST, that's GIST.com, that can give you deeper intelligence. GIST actually assembles a dossier on all your contacts. It's a program that I've started to use for customer relationship management, and I'll be doing a webinar later through my site on social intelligence for job seekers on how to use tools like GIST to prepare for your interviews and to know who your interviewers are. So check back with me later for more details on that. If you're given a schedule with names of interviewers on your interview team, make a quick note or two about each person after you meet. And when you get there, note where they're sitting. This will help you address people by name, or at least remember who asked you what. Make note of and ask questions about ideas, themes, and projects that come up during the interview. Ask questions about them. It conveys interest in the position and in the organization. Always ask questions that allow interviewers to be real people with you. For example, what do you like best about working here? What's kept you engaged in your work? And plan your next steps. Get a mentor, a coach, or both. Whatever you do, find someone outside your current reporting chain, someone who can be an objective observer and help you sort out situations without the noise from their work, their goals, and their relationships. I offer all my potential clients a free initial consultation, and you can find more information on my website about that. And feel free to attend more professional development events like this conference and like the webinars, chats, and live events that I do through my websites. I also have a mailing list and newsletter where I give out free tips and information on job searching. So visit my website. I'd love for you to sign up. And with that, there's how to schedule a meeting with me, again, by email. I also have a Tungle calendar. Initial consultations are free, usually last 45 minutes. And that's that. I guess that's that. All right. Are you guys still with me?
We're here, and we already got some great questions that have come in. And Sean, you're also active on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
It's HIED Career Coach. That's HIED Career Coach, all one word. And again, you can find that all out by visiting higheredcareercoach.com as well.
Great. So we have some great questions we're going to try to go through here really quickly. The first question, what are your thoughts on organizing your Facebook as a professional online profile of yourself?
I think it's a great idea. Now, when I first got into Facebook, I used it purely for social, but as I've gotten into having a business, especially a career-related business, I've had to change my approach. I think it's a great idea, but I also think you'll find better use of ideas like that on LinkedIn or Brazen Careerist. LinkedIn is just a great way to set up a more professional profile, because the difference is, Facebook will always have the social noise from friends and, banter back and forth between friends as well as professional. There are some people that are, many students especially, who set up two different profiles, one for their friends and one for their mom and dad and or their interviewers. But new tools like GIST, which I call social intelligence tools, basically can confound that. They have algorithms that relate things, and they give you suggestions. They'll say, like, I have new leads for Jeff Jackson, and you can look and you can just click the link and see if that's the same Jeff Jackson. So having dual profiles is not a good idea anymore. Things are getting very complicated and very, the network's about to become self-aware, and Arnold Schwarzenegger's bound to come out of the time stream to save us any day now.
And if you join us late to ask questions, there's a question box in the upper right-hand corner. If you click that little red arrow, that should open up some menu options for you, and you can just type your questions there. And if you're on Twitter, you can type in your question with the hashtag #BreakDrink and put your question that way too. Sean, do you believe in the statement, it's not what you know, it's who you know, in regards to networking?
Yes and no. I will say that networking is definitely an asset to you. It can certainly help you find leads, but in many places, especially places that rely on bureaucratic rules and screening in their screening processes, like many larger universities especially, you may not find it to be as effective. So it's good. It can help you develop leads, but I think it's harder to network your way into a job in higher education in general than it is in corporate America. I think part of that is our addiction to bureaucratic rules, and often having a human resource department separate from the hiring department that's screening things and making sure that all the rules are being followed, where corporate culture in different companies dictates how that works. I do think it's possible to get a job strictly on your qualifications. I say that because I didn't know anybody at Penn State when I went there to interview. In fact, I've only ever networked my way into one job in my entire life. So I do believe that it's possible to get jobs based on how well you explain your qualifications.
Yeah. And as I ask this other question, Sean, can you go ahead and put the slide on with your contact information so people can see that again? And as
Sure.
I ask this question, the question is, higher ed is endemic for having to post positions regionally and nationally, but many times end up hiring someone in-house.
Yeah.
Any suggestions for tactfully finding out internal candidates to save time and heartache?
No, and I'll tell you why not. While internal candidates often get hired, they also are, I worked at an institution where actually frequently, especially in later years, it was more likely that people from outside the organization were going to be hired. And this is why it's important to put your hat in the ring for any job you're interested in and make the argument for yourself. Because as a candidate, they're going to take you through the screening, and they're going to listen to what you have to say, and you should give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to hire the most qualified person that fits their needs. As an outside interviewee, you need to make it through a series of screenings that's a lot more time limited than those internal candidates. And I will tell you that in certain organizations, being an internal candidate is not an asset, depending on where you're placed, because they know your entire history, good, bad, and ugly, with the organization. They know what some of your evaluations are going to be, good and bad. So I don't really see the point. I encourage people going into processes with the mindset that they are going to make the best argument about how they approach that ideal. Again, addressing the gaps, that is fine. You'll find that some people internally are overqualified. Some people are not politically connected. And the risk in doing too much intelligence is, well, if the screening committee finds out and it rubs them the wrong way, you're going to get cut.
Is it inappropriate to ask the hiring manager if there are internal candidates?
I don't think so. I think that's a very upfront and delicate way to ask things. And at most places you'll find, especially for the upper level positions, the answer is going to be yes.
Okay. Two more quick, well, they may not be quick, but two more questions. We'll do this one first. She says, I didn't know you could write notes during an interview. Writing notes, or briefly, is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Anything that helps you keep track of what's going on. I mean, like, again, it conveys to me, now every interviewer is going to be different, but to me, taking notes, again, to keep track of the flow of the interview, or to make sure that you cover the high points of the question, or that you put down points to get back to later, that is just good organization and thought process, and it shows, you know, it shows a level of interest and a level of organization, which I think is good. Mm-hmm. Taking notes on every single word is not something to do, because you'll be looking down the entire time. Now, some people find themselves very distracted and cannot function well with their resume out in front of them and a portfolio open with a pen to take notes. But have them with you. At least have it occur to the interviewer that it's crossed your mind that there might be things worth writing down. Yeah. Because if you don't, it doesn't convey. To me, it always rubs me the wrong way when I see someone come in the room and sit down, and maybe worst case scenario, if your body language is too lax and you're kind of leaning forward with your hands crossed, or even worse, you know, other hand gestures or other things can make you seem either too nervous or too overconfident. And either way, coming in to look prepared and to take a note or two, most people will not have any problem with taking quick notes to help you keep track and to help you answer the questions better. No one should hold that against you.
And the last question, which proves this webinar to be very timely, I have a phone interview tomorrow morning. Any tips for phone interviewing versus on-site?
Talk slower. You know, the hard part about phone interviews, it just depends. If it's a speakerphone interview where you've got more than one person sitting around a speakerphone, there's going to be that interesting click and delay. So, you know, the pacing is often very odd, and so you need to make sure that your pacing is as even as possible. One way I do this is whenever I have a phone interview, I stand up the entire time, and I talk, you know, and walk and keep myself active. But I also try to pay attention to the pace of things. If I'm feeling jittery, I'm probably talking too fast. And if I'm, you know, sluggish, I'm maybe talking too slow. So that's one tip that I usually share. Don't relax too much, and pace yourself.
I would add, be okay with silence. And you're not going to get any of the affirmation head nods. And so if you tell a joke, you're not going to know if people are going to laugh or not. So be okay with the silence on the other end of the line.
Yeah. I mean, they tell you that in your counseling class during grad school, your counseling skills. You have to be comfortable with silence. Usually, it could mean that you've made a really good point that they're writing down so that they don't forget. So don't be afraid to let them have the time to do that.
And we had a participant who put something that says, "Still get dressed for the phone interview like you were there," and that's a good point because we've done this here. We've had Skype interviews, and for people who actually get dressed for the Skype interview, it goes a long way because they're still thinking about their appearance and presence, and people who don't, it's kind of telling.
Yeah, oh yeah. I always dress up. I always at least wear a nice shirt and a tie for any phone interview.
Yeah.
Gets me in the right mindset.
Sean, that's all the questions.
Well, great. Thanks. Thanks again for letting me do this. I appreciate it, and I'm certainly going to listen in on some other sessions later.
And you can find Sean at sean@higheredcareercoach.com. If you have any questions, follow up with him there. He's got some great programs, so be sure to go to higheredcareercoach.com to check out what he has to offer there.